Welcome, Jessica. Dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me officially welcome all of you to our second public webinar of the year. We are just delighted at the response that we're getting, and really glad that so many of you are interested in what we have to say about leadership. And it's just a lot of fun to see friendly faces and new faces and Sparks Group faces. So today we're going to be talking about vertical leadership development. Our title today is Change the Game, Reinventing Leadership Development. I know many of you are already familiar with this and some of you may be new to it. But Anna's going to walk us through today with probably a commentary here and there from me. But we're delighted to have you. And Lisa and I will be monitoring the chat and dropping links in. So feel free to put questions in. We'll try and keep up with those. And yeah, thanks for giving us an hour of your day. We really appreciate it. So over to you, Anna.
Thanks. All right. Well, I'm really excited to be with all of you. I love this topic, and I love the fact that I know some of you on the call know lots about it, and others maybe haven't heard much about it. So this is going to be fun together today. Jessica already mentioned Lisa. So this is the three of us that run the Sparks group on the day-to-day. Lisa is probably familiar to you in her name because she sends out links to take assessments. She sends over invoices. Any of you who end up being clients of the Sparks Group or who are clients of the Sparks Group will get an email from Lisa at some time. So here she is. Lisa, thanks for being with us today. She's also going to be monitoring the chat, dropping some links in there for you. So keep your eye there.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all.
And Anna, it looks like there's two PowerPoints up on the screen. Maybe you could take a look at your visual and just see, maybe you need to go in full screen mode.
Okay, yeah, give me 1 second.
Okay. I don't know if it's a little funky for anyone else, but it was for me.
Try one more time. Here we go. It looks like maybe there were two PowerPoints open. Is that better?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you so much for the flag. Awesome. Okie doke. Beyond the three of us, we also work with a team of about 40 coaches, consultants, and facilitators, just a handful of whom are on this slide. We're working on a new slide to figure out how we can fit all of the pictures of our team on the slide now, but we're working on that, and that'll be in our next webinar, I imagine. Welcome to those of you on our team who are here to support us today. So we are going to walk through a couple of things that we alluded to in our emails sharing about this webinar. We're going to talk a little bit about what we call the complexity crisis is facing all of us as leaders today, how vertical development might respond to that, what it is. We're going to talk a little bit about how you can think about your organization as a whole and where they might be in the stages of vertical development. And then very tactically, we're going to talk about some specific tools that we can all use for growth if we do want to consider our stage of development and it's not quite working for us at the moment. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the Vertical Intelligence Program, which is something that we've done with several leadership teams and really wanted to share with others what that model looks like. So that's our agenda for today. So before I dive in, and because I know we have a big group of people here, I want to just put up a quick poll. Lisa's going to do that for us around this question. How much do you already know about vertical development? Sometimes this is called maturity. Sometimes this is called stages of adult development. Where would you put yourself in terms of your knowledge? All right, it looks like we have a good number of folks who are either in a little bit or a fair amount. Perfect. Excellent. All right, good. Excellent. So let's start with what we call the complexity crisis. What you're looking at here is kind of a simplified graph on how we can think about ourselves developing as leaders and what happens as we go forward in various stages of leadership with respect to what becomes the gap between what we are capable of and what we need to be capable of. So you can see as we're at more junior levels within organizations, there's not much of a gap between how complex things are for us and how we're able to meet it. But as we go on in these higher levels, the gap becomes larger. And when the gap becomes larger, we think about how might we address that gap. And what we're sharing with you today is that the way that we think about addressing it at the Sparks Group is um, by juxtaposing these ideas of competency, kind of what we know, what is the skill set we have, what's in our leadership tool belt, if you will, and how we think, how we approach the world. So you can see that quote at the bottom is really, I think, insightful. And I'd actually love for you guys to pop into the chat if you see this same thing in your organizations. So most leaders know what they should be doing. And in fact, they even want to be doing it. But sometimes what we lack is the actual personal development, the capacity in our brains to even figure out how to do it. So if that resonates with you, love to hear that in the chat. If it doesn't resonate with you, also love to hear that in the chat. So we think the antidote to this is vertical development. The idea that as we grow and mature, we have the ability to think in increasingly complex ways. And you've probably seen this in yourself over time, right? Times in which you felt like a problem was really simple. And then over time, you went, many years later, you look back in that and said, it wasn't as simple as I thought. I can see so much more about that challenge now. So it's all about the lens that we're looking at the world through. You can think of it as a pair of glasses, um, or you can think about it as a worldview. That sometimes is a little bit more common language that we might use around it. So just to make this super clear, because I think it is a little bit of a difficult concept sometimes to explain to others. And so the easiest way to explain it is really by thinking about this item that all of us have in front of us right now, probably, and is hopefully not distracting any of us. But that is a smartphone. So when we think about what we would call horizontal development, that is the apps that we can put on our phone, the stuff that our phone can do for us. It can perform in these ways. So I can make it do my banking. I can access games on it. I can call someone. I can take a picture. I can scroll for hours and hours and hours on whatever choice app you might want. And that would be horizontal development. What's all the stuff I can do on my phone? But at some point, if I put a whole bunch of different apps on my phone, tons of different things I can do on my phone, I have this phone that has all these tools in it, and eventually it's going to start to run a little slower because it has so many tools, but it can't work with all of them at the same time. It can't use them all to their best capacities. And so then what we think about, if we think about vertical development, is something a little bit more like the operating system. How fast can my operating system go? How is it processing all these different pieces of information and putting together what I have on all these different apps in a way that's most effective to get me to bring my best self, to get my phone to bring its best self to me and make it the best tool I have in front of me? So when we think about vertical development, we can think about it in terms of very predictable stages. I think for those of you who remember your own stages of childhood development or have seen yourself develop over time, for those of you who work with others, those of you who have kids, you have seen these stages of development as people go through them, but maybe you haven't been able to name them so clearly in the past. So we go through super predictable stages as children, all of us do. In childhood development, we are all going through those stages and we are all coming out of childhood development. When we come out of childhood development, then we enter into adult development. And really interestingly, for a long time, people thought that adults just got into adulthood, period. And there weren't necessarily these different layers or stages to our development as adults. And eventually, as they began studying us as adults, they realized, wait, these stages are really, really predictable. I can see where people are going to go next. So we do go through these stages in a predictable way, but really different from childhood development. Significant difference is they are not correlated with age. So while we could say like teenagers roughly are going to do this or think about the world like this, toddlers are roughly going to do this or think about the world like this, we can't say people in their 40s are going to be in this stage and people in their 50s are going to be in this other stage. So when we enter into adult development, we enter at this first stage, which is the first line there. I think Lisa's dropping in the chat a handout for you that you can use a little bit as a cheat sheet around these stages. So feel free to click on that and grab it if you want. But when we go into the stages of vertical development, we do begin at the beginning. All of us begin at that first stage there at the top of the list called self-protecting. And then we move sequentially through the stages. We can't skip any stages. So even if we don't like a stage, we can't jump over it. We have to move through it. Um, Really importantly, 99% of us are not going through all these stages. So I certainly get on conversations with clients where they say, how do I get to the end? And the goal is not really to get to the end because 99% of us won't get there. We as adults are going to quote unquote top out at some place. We're going to get to a stage and then we're going to be done and we're not going to develop anymore. I'll talk a little bit about what these different stages are and how many, what percentage of the population gets to each, but only 1% gets to the last two stages there at the bottom, transforming being. Um, you're going to hear me use this phrase center of gravity a little bit today. And what I'm going to be asking you as we talk about these different stages is to think about your organization or a smaller team within your organization in terms of where might their center of gravity be. So center of gravity for us means what stage are we in most of the time? So let's pretend that my stage is specializing. It's pretty likely that that is where I'm going to be. And sometimes I'm going to be in conforming. That's the stage right before that I went through. And maybe sometimes I'm going to be reaching into performing. But I'm going to say my center of gravity is specializing because that's where I am most of the time. It doesn't mean I'm never in conforming. It doesn't mean I'm never in performing, but that's where I am usually. Um, at the stage that you're at, you can access everything before. So again, let's say I'm at specializing. I can access that worldview of conforming. I can access the worldview of self-protecting, but I won't necessarily be able to jump forward and access internalizing, for example. I'm going to go through each of these stages in a little bit more detail. Before I go there, I want to pause and see, Jessica, is there anything that you want to add? Anybody here, are there any questions, comments, thoughts?
I don't think anything I want to add. I'm fixing the link, everyone, so I'll drop that in a hot second here. Thanks for your patience.
All right, cool. I also might, let me see if I could drop in this link if it would work.
I got it.
Okay.
Okay, let's see if that one does it.
All righty. So let's
No,
go. No, still not good.
that's going to be SharePoint's asking for a login. I'm going to drop in a HubSpot link. Everybody use that one instead.
Okay. Cool. So self-protecting. This is the first stage that we're all going to go in, first stage after childhood development. Um, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. 5% of adults are here, and this will be the only stage in adult development that they're in. So basics here are kind of a focus on self. I don't have to follow the rules. The way I want it is kind of the way I want it. It's not my fault. All that kind of thing. Um, these folks can be really, really good in emergencies because they make snap decisions and they run forward quickly. So it's not that this is not valuable in some cases. It definitely is, but we just have fewer adults who are in that stage and then stay in that stage. Most of us will get to conforming. So we have about 10% of the population here. In conforming, this is the easiest one for me to look back and see myself in, by the way. I wonder if it will be like that for the rest of you. About 10% of the population is in conforming. So in this stage, we really care about the group that we're in and what the group expects of us, and the group norms become really, really important. And these ideas that I'm in it together with these people, it's us against them, are really prevalent in this stage for me. In this stage, I have the strengths of being pretty loyal. So if you have folks in your organization who are like, I'm in it for the team, whatever the team needs, I do it, I'm showing up, they might be in conforming. They're ready to show up and do what needs to be done for the team. Great strengths. Some of the challenges for this at this stage can be that you can be a little intolerant of difference because you kind of want everyone to be the same and in the group that you're in. And you can also see feedback as kind of threatening. Because imagine if I'm part of the group and somebody says I'm doing something wrong, that makes me scared that maybe they don't want me as part of the group anymore. And that's my most important thing during this stage. Jessica, anything you want to add?
I think I was just going to add that I think that this stage is inside all of us, even if we have grown past it. You can see that reflected in our love of sports teams, right?
Hmm.
I went to Michigan State. Anna is a University of Michigan fan. We joke about that all the time. My team versus your team. I think college, professional sports, the Olympics was a really great example of how we love to feel a part of something that's bigger than us, and it's sort of my team or my identity against yours, if you will. So I think that that's a really wonderful way that this part of who we are gets met out in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, great example. I also like to think of these different fitness trends, like the people who do CrossFit. They really want to be part of the group that does CrossFit, or I'm the person who runs marathons, or I'm the person who does strength training. I feel like that's where it shows up also very clearly for a lot of people. Okie doke. So, okay, I'm going to spend a little more time here because actually, most of the people around you are going to be in this stage, specializing, or the next stage that we're going to talk about, performing. So we have about 35% of the population in this stage specializing. This is a very common stage that we're going to be in while we're in the work world, as is the next stage, performing. At this stage, we are really focused on the knowledge that we bring to the table and feeling like we have a technical skill set that we can provide. And that's what we think is most valued in us during this stage. What that means is I am trying to show up with the right answer if I'm in this stage. I might be a little bit more black and white when I'm in this stage because I do think there is a right answer in this stage. I think it's really important to share my opinion in this stage because I really think that I have something to add. Um, some of the strengths for this stage are I have really high standards. I'm an incredibly strong individual contributor. I really show up in that sense. I can be really data driven, focused on evidence, and I'm pretty good at meeting a goal. Tell me what to do, and I'm going to get there. Some of the challenges for me at this stage are that I might be pretty reluctant to delegate because I think I'm the one with the answer, and maybe somebody else won't have it in the way that I want it to be. That could also lead me to micromanaging. I might experience other people's perspectives if they don't agree with me as competing, not as kind of additive, but rather us against them kind of a thing. And it might be difficult for me to take risks because I want to get it right. I don't want it to go wrong. Um, so sometimes at this stage, I can appear to people on the outside as thinking I'm better than others, thinking I'm superior, smarter, like however you want to put the label on that. Um, so that can be a little difficult. Any questions, thoughts about this stage? Maybe just a quick thumbs up in the chat if you see people around you at this stage. I certainly do. Yeah, perfect. Thumbs up on your video. Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of us also see this in ourselves. Just like Jessica said, we can see conforming in ourselves. We can see specializing in ourselves. If you've ever gotten to that point where you thought, like, I know the right answer, why isn't anyone listening to me? That's specializing. I think we're all there sometimes.
I noticed
Um,
this for myself. I think I've wrestled this to the ground a fair bit at work, the work context, but I notice in my parenting role, I still think I have the right answer a lot when I'm talking to my children. And remembering to be open-minded and allow their own perspective and point of view to have a place is something that I still need to work on. That's so I see specializing in myself, especially when I'm with my kids. Yeah. It doesn't play very well most of the time with teenagers because they can also have elements of this.
yeah, that's a great example. And I think highlights the point that our stages of development are showing up all over the place. This is not exclusively a work thing. It's very relevant to what we're doing at work and helps us address our challenges at work. But our stage of development is showing up all the places that we are. All right. So What happens in specializing and in these in the other stages as well is you get to a point where the stage is not fitting for you anymore. And what that feels like is like I'm jamming up against the ceiling. This is getting really frustrating for me. Like, why aren't things working in the way I want them to work? Why is this feeling bad when it used to feel good to be the one that showed up with the right answer and that was working? And so when we hit something like a ceiling like that, it might feel a little bit like I am certain that the right answer is to paint this wall red. Why can't I get anyone to listen to me? I'm so frustrated. And if I can, I might notice that I need to approach it in a different way. So while red might be the most pleasant color for whatever the reason is, maybe there's something else going on here that I don't understand or I haven't taken into account. And I need to know that in order to get people to go along with me with my idea of what color we should paint the wall. Once I hit against that ceiling where just knowing the right answer is not enough for me anymore, that's when I'm likely to get pushed into performing. Now, when I say pushed, I want to flag here for us that we can very deliberately push ourselves to grow through the stages, which is what we're going to be talking about later today in terms of the tools we can use, programs we can bring, etc. But this also happens naturally in us, sometimes without us noticing. So I might get pushed into performing because I get to that ceiling of specializing. And when I get to performing, the thing that I'm looking for now is not to be the person that has the right answer, but the person who can get it done, the person who can get the outcome. This stage is a wonderful stage to have when you're in the work world. It's super valued in what we would consider like common Western business culture as it exists. This person is the person who is going to drive to completion. They can get an outcome. They can see a bigger picture than they could back in specializing. They're able to take in more pieces of context around them. They're super hardworking and dedicated. All great things about this stage, all really, really helpful about this stage. Um, and this stage feels really, really good for a certain period of time. To be the one that everyone comes to because they know you can get it done, to be relied upon like that, to have people count on you feels really, really great at this stage for a while. And that ceiling of this stage begins to come typically with a couple of indicators. One, burnout. So when you feel yourself getting burnt out, it might be a question of, is it time for me actually to transition into the next stage? Because what we see in burnout is I am the person that can get everything done. I can make all the outcomes. Whatever you want, I can do it for you. But and then this is your second indicator. But number one, I'm tired. And number two, it just doesn't feel that great anymore. It feels like, is this all there is? I just keep getting outcomes all over the place or hitting these goals, but like people told me this was going to feel amazing and it did for a little while, but now it doesn't. So, how do I feel amazing? That is when you're going to hit this ceiling of performing, which is going to push you over into the next stage, which is called internalizing. Before I flip slides, I do need to say that this is the most difficult transition for us in our adult development. And I'm going to explain a little bit why. But this kind of threshold, quote unquote, to pass through is very, very difficult. Because what we're doing in internalizing is we're basically letting go of all the societal norms that have been in us just naturally by living in the world that we're in, all the kind of common understanding of what the rules and regulations of living in this world are. And we're saying, I might have the opportunity to redefine this for myself. Maybe the rules I want to follow are actually different than the rules the world is putting on me or the expectations the world is putting on me. So this is a bit of a struggle stage. It's a struggle because I have to let go of things that just felt universally true to me, kind of how the world works. And I have to make it up myself. So I have to get creative and think through how do I want it to be. And that is really, really challenging. Really, really challenging. And in this stage, people feel a lot of churn. It's a lot of what if and how could it? And am I actually letting go of that? And this is becoming the most important? How could that be? It feels like a strong, strong tension during this stage. What can happen for folks in internalizing and the people around them for that matter is all of a sudden people don't get you because you used to be the person that they went to and you marched forward and you got the outcome that they want. And then all of a sudden you are thinking about things differently than people around you are. And that feels uncomfortable to the people around you sometimes. And it feels uncomfortable to you because you feel a little alone about it. This is a lonely stage. You're in yourself, you're in your own head during this stage, trying to figure out how should everything work in a way that feels really good to me. In this stage, you can be pretty like intolerant of structure and rules. You get really flexible in this stage. So if you had somebody before who was like a real rule follower and all of a sudden they're all not following the rules, you can think a little bit about a potential developmental transition here into internalizing. Let me pause right there. Let me just also share, we have about 10% of people in internalizing. All right, Todd, good question in here. Okay, Jennifer, what percentage of people get to these stages 4 and 5? Thank you. For performing, this one, we have about 30%. So we have 65% of the population is in either specializing or performing. So this is going to be the bulk of us for a lot of our lives, the bulk of the people that work around you. Internalizing 10% are in internalizing.
Probably 20, kind of all post-conventional.
All in the remaining 4 stages, you
Yeah,
mean?
a little bit higher. Yeah.
Yeah, 20% total in the rest of them, yeah.
Yeah. Um, Todd, your question is great. Yes, this is absolutely about ego development. So you can think about ego growing and building up through performing and then cresting, coming over the top to the later stages, starting with internalizing is sort of ego dissipating. So yes, absolutely. What is Carolina's question? How does the transition from performing to internalizing impact engagement towards work? Oh, what a good question. You want to take that one, Anna?
Yeah, definitely in performing, you're really focused on work, you're really hardworking. And in performing, you're also really focused on kind of the group around you, which can commonly be your team, your organization as a whole. But in internalizing, you're pulling away from work because that's where all those norms are, pulling away from work a little bit more, and you're really turning inward. So not so much focus on the team or the organization or the group around you, but more inward focus on the self, which just naturally implies a moving away, a disengagement from what was previously really important to you, which was performing at work, getting the outcomes, showing up for the team, etc.
Yeah. And there can be, to build on that a little bit, there can be a lot of tension between people who are moving into internalizing and people who are still solidly at specializing and performing. Part of it is that in internalizing, as Anna mentioned, I'm just going to put some different words to it. You are less interested in playing the game by the rules that have been set out. And you're starting to challenge the assumptions behind the rules, challenge the rules, challenge the assumptions underlying the rules. And so people at earlier stages can be like, why are you asking all these questions? Why are you not like, this is the way we've always done it. This is what we should do. Why can you not just execute? Why can you not just do the thing? Instead, you're standing back. The other dynamic that happens at internalizing is that there is specializing and performing are really high activity stages. There's a lot of doing, right? I'm answering questions, I'm solving problems, I'm having impact, I'm being efficient. So there's a lot of activity. There's a clear preference towards doing. And as you come into internalizing, you can think about being is kind of coming up and saying, hello, here I am. Like, how about taking a rest? So burnout is one of the major limitations at performing that will cause somebody to start to grow into internalizing. And so there is also this, the pace. People at internalizing want to slow the pace down. They want to slow the action down. And that can also create some friction or some tension at work and with people at the more traditional stages of development. So yeah, that's a really great question. What other questions are here? Terry says, hi, Terry, it's nice to see you here. To successfully transition from performing to internalizing, how much does a mentor matter? What is critical to have for success? Do you want to take that one, Anna, or you want me to take it?
Yeah, why don't you take it and I can add whatever.
Yeah, so the answer is yes. One of the major components to vertical development that we know about is being able to spend time with and see people who are at later stages of development than you are. So when you see people who are making sense of the world differently and are living differently, that provides a lot of support and guidance in terms of, okay, what does it look like as my worldview begins to change? So we think that that having a mentor or having a guide or having someone to help integrate that the discomfort or the disorientation that comes with these transitions is a really important part of the equation. Yeah, great question, Terry. I
Yeah, and
love
I
all
would
these
add
questions.
if you have a mentor who's in the stage that you're trying to exit from, that could also feel like a tension. So, like at
Mhm.
work, if you are going into internalizing and your mentor is in performing, that also maybe could feel tough.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So this is a time when I there's a story I tell that I had a coaching client who we tested. We ran an assessment to figure out where she was, and she was at my stage of development. So that was an okay match from a coaching perspective. But as we worked together, she entered into a really rapid period of growth, and I did not. So I really believe that she outgrew me during the time that we were working together. And then our time ended, but she came back and she wanted more coaching. And I said, I really don't think I'm the right coach for you anymore because developmentally I'm just not where you are any longer. And so I actually introduced her to a colleague of mine who I know was at a later stage of development than me and probably would be a better fit for that client. They had a call together and she came back to me and she said, I get why you wanted me to have that conversation and potentially work with her. I want to stick with you, but at least for right now, thank you. I understand what you're saying and I get the difference. And, I'm making an informed choice about that. But I'm not working with her any longer. But if she comes back, that's always something I'm asking, like, am I the right person or not for you? So that match between people who are in an influential role with you developmentally, whether or not you know about vertical development, you are going to gravitate towards somebody who you perceive as being more mature or developmentally further along than you. In most cases, that's going to happen unconsciously. So, Claude, nice to see you. Do the percent per level change when you examine it in a specific leadership level, frontline, middle, senior, executive? I don't know the research-based answer to this question, and I don't know. I don't know if there has been specific research on this. What I would offer is that we do know that the the stage of development of the CEO or the senior leadership team in an organization is going to act like a governor on the organization as whole. And I don't want to get too out ahead on that because Anna may be going to speak about it as we get along in the content here. But if the CEO's center of gravity is at specializing, it is unlikely that the organization as a whole is going to be able to perform at a stage of development that is later than that. So, but we do see, you would think that a lot of CEOs might be later stage given the complexity of what they're facing. And that is not necessarily true. So that goes kind of back to the leadership development imperative that Anna spoke about at the beginning, that the world is getting more complex. The world is changing faster and faster, right? Like things are not slowing down. They're not getting simpler. Everything is going in the other direction. And so, as the complexity crisis slide showed, more and more leaders, especially as we grow in leadership, are what Robert Keegan at Harvard calls we're in over our heads, right? We are faced with dealing with a context that is more complex than we're really equipped to handle. So that's why we believe that this is so important that we need to continue to develop capacity in leaders to meet that change and meet that complexity. Yeah. All right, go ahead, Anna. Oh, there's more questions in here. You want to tackle a couple of these?
Yeah. So Shelley is asking about whether the stages equate to success as a leader. And I think, Shelley, you're actually really pointing to something that's most important about this model. And that is the stage that I'm at working for me and the people around me? So leaders who are in specializing, but have what looks a little bit more like an individual contributor role might be just fine at specializing. depending on what the organization is asking of them. Performing, again, like I said, sort of like it's the common way we think about quote unquote great leaders in like the common Western business culture is probably performing like hardworking, driving, just getting it done types. But that could be what the organization needs. The organization could also need something really different from them, like thinking differently, slowing down, not driving towards outcomes, but thinking about the bigger picture in a different way. So then that might be working for the organization, or it might not. Um, Internalizing, like we talked about, can generate different ways of thinking. Maybe the organization is needing a little bit of that. And that really leads to the next stage, which, Carlton, do you mind if I hold your question just so I can talk about this next stage? I'm
Yes,
gonna come,
that's fine.
okay, I'm gonna come right back to you. Um, this next stage was just called strategizing. We have about 5% of people who get to strategizing. And in strategizing, I'm able to take that, all that remaking of the world and how it works and all my ideas that I was working on and internalizing, and I was really inward focused about. I'm now able to really successfully bring those to others around me. So I'm able to bring a different way of thinking, shepherd other people along with this new and different way of thinking when I'm in this stage. So what's important about this stage with respect to Shelley's question is if the organization needs somebody to lead something that looks like transformational change, significantly different way of doing business, of approaching a problem, of thinking about the customer, whatever happens to be facing that organization, leaders in this stage are the best equipped to lead an organization through that. So that might be what you're looking for in your leaders at a particular time in the organization. At this stage, uh, I, we're not focused internally anymore like we were in internalizing and kind of thinking about how I remake the world. It's how do I remake it for everybody around me? How do we get everyone around me to think differently? So we're super collaborative at this stage, really tolerant of a lot of different perspectives. With the person who asked about ego, not attached to ego at all in this stage. We're really kind of thinking so much, quote unquote, bigger than that. At this stage, we're all about feedback. Tell me what I need to know. I just want to grow. I want to hear other perspectives, all these kinds of things. But as with every stage has something that makes it a little challenging. And so in strategizing, some of the challenges that we might face are that we can need more space and time for reflection than we may have at previous stages. So while people want to add a lot of access to a leader and they might want the leader to have the answer right away, in this stage, I might not have that. I might step back a lot to try to kind of figure out how things are working before I bring it to others. Um, I could come across as arrogant in this stage because I think I have this grand new way of looking at the world and I want everyone to come along with me. For some people, that might look a little off. So I will need to be mindful of that uh, in this stage. Jessica, anything you want to add about this stage before I go to Carlton's question?
Um, I was typing, so I'm not sure I caught everything you said, but I guess the while we're saying, I just typed in the chat that the fit is the key question. And simultaneously, if we know we have sort of a leadership crisis, a gap in sufficient leadership to meet the growing complexity and change in the world, the research does show that at least for what we know right now, that the strategizing stage is the stage that is most highly correlated, and listen to these words because this is a high bar, with the ability to achieve and sustain transformational change. This would be the stage that can kind of meet the world at its most complex, most effectively to make something happen, sustain it, and lead people through that. Does everybody need to do that? Not even close, right? That's not what all of us are being asked to do. But for the people who are in those roles or who do aspire to that kind of transformational change, right now strategizing is the stage that is believed to be most enabling of that kind of work.
Yeah, that's perfect. Let me loop back to Carlton's question real quick because I promised that I would. How does a person who's later developed navigate an environment when the senior leadership is early developed? Well, I think one of the priorities for the organization is to help the leaders expand the way that they're thinking so that others in the organization can follow along and the organization can grow. That's certainly one of them. And there's some very specific strategies that we can use to challenge ourselves to develop across the stages. I'm not going to talk about today the very, very specific ones, like what exactly do we do to go from specializing to performing? But Carlton, I totally welcome a conversation with you about that. Um, but there are things that we might do to encourage people around us to think in different ways that will help them develop over time. Christy, yes, there's an assessment uh, which you can take. It measures your center of gravity, basically. Brian, AI, let me skip over that one for just right now. Todd, what happens when you feel previous stages trying to pull your mindset back? Ooh, Todd, you are leading right to one of the tools at the end. So I'm holding that. Um, and then Leslie, comment. Thank you so, so much. Everyone check that out. Okay, let's move on.
Good stuff. Great questions.
Yeah, you guys are the best group that we've had in a webinar. This is a lot of fun. Um, So very quickly, so this is our last two stages. It's transforming and then being. We have about 1% of the population who is getting to these two stages. So for most of us, this is not the quote unquote goal. Even though in a lot of other places in our lives, we see like the sequential progression and we want to get to the top of the ladder or get to the end of the path or whatever it is. For most of us, this is not necessarily where we're going to want to be or where is going to feel the right fit for us. So just kind of take that as it is. Um, in this stage, I'm getting a lot more into spirituality and understanding this bigger picture of the world. In this stage, I probably am not really going to be in the work world. I want to be in this bigger thinking, kind of lots of space for reflection and consideration stage. But this is the stage I'm likely in if I'm leading big societal change. I am trying to bring that spirituality to a lot of other people around me. I'm going to be here. So you can think of in your mind, I'm sure, of a couple of figures who might have been in this stage because they're able to kind of access this higher plane, higher way of thinking. But this stage, if you only have 1% in it, again, feels pretty lonely. It's like, who else is kind of here with me? Who else is thinking in these ways? I don't necessarily have a lot of people around me who are doing that. So I want to give us a chance here to pause and think about your organization or your team, whatever's most appropriate for you based on your role, et cetera. What would you say is their center of gravity? Lisa's going to pop up a poll question. What do you think is the center of gravity for your organization as a whole or your team? Let's see if the percentages work out as the general population.
Looking like a pretty normal distribution. Or we can see it. You guys can't see it yet, right?
Here, I can share the results. Make your last answer if you want to, and we can share these. Can you see that? Yeah. So we've got, again, like we have, generally speaking, bulk of folks in specializing in performing, some in the earlier stages, some in the later stages. All right, let me stop sharing that. So big question here then is what we've been talking about in terms of fit. So my question for you all to consider is this a fit? Is where your organization is right now or where your team is now a fit for what you're being asked to do, what the market is demanding, what the world is demanding of you at this time? And if it is, that's great. And if it's not, then we consider, all right, how can we shift a little bit? How can we begin to be thinking in different ways? So this is where I'm going to get into our tools for growth. There are 4 tools that we can use to grow from stage to stage. And then in addition to this, there are very specific things we can do to grow from a particular stage to another particular stage. I'm going to do the general ones today, and maybe we'll have an opportunity to do the particular ways in a webinar in the future. So the first one of the 4 tools is to see and navigate complexity. So bottom line here is that we have to know that the situation that we're in is complex. We have to be able to see that there's not a clear right answer. We have to be able to see that it's not black and white, it's gray. There's a lot of different ways I could be thinking about it. There's a lot of different factors, etc. And it's easy to walk into a situation and imagine it's much simpler than it might appear very simple initially, and then we kind of can see the complexity over time. So as I talk about these tools, I'm just going to give you an example that I have from my own work life so you can kind of hear what this might look like in practice. So this tool I used at a time that I was at one of the big 4 consulting firms, and I was working for a client who ended up hiring 2 contractors to basically do the same job. So one was my firm and one was another firm. So you can imagine that you get in there and then everyone's got I want to do that part. I want to impress the client. My firm's better than your firm, all this stuff. So could have walked in there with, this is kind of simple. My team has to outperform. We have to win the work next year. So that's how we're going to focus on it. But if you can hold on a second, if I could hold on a second to get there, I would know that there was these other pieces at play here. So one of them, for example, was, what's the history of this situation? How did it end up like this? Why might this decision have been made? How is this a consequence of something? What does the client want? Are these 2 contractors better actually for the client? How might they have the best experience? What does partnership with the other contractor look like? How do I need to make this financially successful for my firm? What are my team members all worried about these other contractors now being on the scene? What are my opportunities in the future? If I can work really well in this particular environment, what are the opportunities for the client, for me, for the team? So there's all these different bits going on. And I could have walked in probably and relatively successfully said, us or them, and got really focused on that. Or I'm exclusively focusing on the client. That's the most important thing. But being able to see this more complex environment allows me to manage different things and not just get focused on a simplified view of what's going on. And this is kind of a precursor for the other 3 tools we're going to talk about. So I need to be able to even see that the situation is more complex than it might initially appear very much on the surface in order to then decide that I'm going to access these other tools. So the other one is one that we do pretty commonly, take multiple perspectives. What's really important and unique about this tool with respect to vertical development is it is not that I want to take your perspective with my brain. So it does not help me to sit in Jessica's seat with my brain and pretend to see what she sees. It does help me to pause and go, how might I get in Jessica's environment, the way she thinks, things that are impacting her right now? If I can get in that state, then this is going to be a really powerful tool for me. So in that example that I was sharing about my consulting experience, I could look at my own perspective, obviously, look at the other contractor's lead perspective, think about my team members' perspectives, think about the other contractor's team members, our client, the ultimate beneficiary of the project, the person who made the contracting decision, the partner I reported to at Deloitte. All these people are going to have a different view on what's going on here. And if I can pull all that in, that gives me a lot to work with and a lot to enhance my understanding and broaden my worldview. How does all this work? If I bring in different perspectives, I can see what it looks like from other people's point of view, and that expands my own point of view, which is ultimately what we're trying to do over these stages of development. Third tool, and I think actually somebody mentioned this one in the chat, is around self-reflection. So This is let me step back and see what's going on inside of me and how that's impacting what's happening in front of me. How's that impacting how am I showing up? So in my example, I had to ask myself questions like, geez, do I feel threatened right now? I might feel a little threatened. How is that showing up in for others? How is that showing up in the decisions I'm making? Am I worried about being judged here? Does somebody think my past work was bad and that's why they brought in somebody else? Geez, am I good at my job? Does somebody just not like me? This one client has always been unfriendly. Do they not like me? If I can notice that these things are going on in me, then I can name them, put them on the table for consideration versus allowing that feeling of threat of being threatened to take over the way that I show up without me realizing that that's what's happening. So this one is not a one and done, as you can imagine. This one is like constantly self-reflecting. What's going on in me today? What's going on in me right now? Because this person said that thing to me in the meeting 5 minutes ago. Always kind of thinking about what's going on in me will help me to realize what is going on in this situation. Because I have to take that lens off of what the biases are that are churning up in me at the moment. And then the last one is to be able to hold opposing ideas simultaneously. I actually think this is one of the hardest ones, but really, really helps our development to be able to get to a place where we could say the answer is both right and wrong. It's both black and white, right? And this is not about necessarily being able to see the gray. This is about being able to see two things that are totally opposed as being possible at the same time. So in my case, this could be something like our team is the best for this project, and their team could also be the best for this project. Or together, we're the best for the project. And also individually, we could be the best for the project, right? Just being able to see that there's this like ability to have multiple different options, multiple ways to navigate. It gets me to the point where I can see so much more in front of me. And when I can see a lot more in front of me, then I have all kinds of different options available to me. If I can only see this far, I only have the lanes right here available to me. If I can see more and more by holding different points of view and realizing that they're both true, then I have a lot more choice on how I might approach the particular situation in front of me, the complexity in front of me. So let me just take a pause here. Lisa, you want to throw up this poll question. What strategy do you think would be most useful to your organization or your team? All right, take multiple perspectives really looks like it's winning here. Yeah. All right, let me end and share this. So we've got some who are talking about being able to see and navigate the complexity. Bye, Leslie. See you later. Lots who are talking about take multiple perspectives, some in self-reflect and adjust, and a good portion also in hold opposing ideas simultaneously. So those are all tools that you all can take back to your teams as appropriate. Let me just talk a little bit about how we bring this kind of concept to teams that we work with, some of our clients. Well, we think of it like a vertical intelligence program that has multiple different pieces in it that help us grow our capacity to address the increasing complexity that we are seeing around us. As Jessica said, it's never going to get less complex. We're just moving into more complex, more change, faster pace. Brian asked something about AI. We all know that there's a lot of things around us that are creating a lot of uncertainty and complexity. So in this program, we start with the assessment, which somebody asked about. How does the assessment work? I love this assessment, by the way. It's like one of my favorites. Everybody takes the assessment, is able to calibrate kind of where their current center of gravity is, and think a little bit about what might be the development opportunities for them based on their current stage. Second big piece is a 2-day workshop where we talk all about what we talked about today in terms of the different stages. We dive in a lot more detail. We talk about the particular moves to move from stage to stage. And then we're following that with monthly workshops for the group. We're sustaining this learning, continuing on so somebody has an opportunity to go a little deeper. Remember, this is our own personal development. This is definitely not one and done. This is not, I learned how to create pivot tables in Excel, check, move on. I have to hold this for a little while in order to make these big developmental shifts. And then lastly, we put a coaching component in here. So one-on-one with a coach, but also peer coaching. So people have the chance to support each other, learn how to coach, so they're able to bring that also to their organization. So this is also a really good opportunity to kind of build a coaching culture within your organization by teaching your leaders about that. All right. So could be good for you. Sorry, I didn't just go to the next slide. Could be good for you or your team if um, your leaders look like they have all the skills that they need, but something's holding them back. You're seeing a leadership team that's really overwhelmed or burnt out. Might be they be hitting a ceiling, and they've had experience with programs that seemed exciting and got everyone going in the right direction, but then it kind of died off, right? Maybe the it wasn't sustained over time. The support wasn't there in the long term. So that's what we have for you today. Feel free to stay on for a couple extra minutes if you want to. I would love, Jessica or I would love to hear about your team. We'd love to hear about kind of how you're thinking about this vertical development model for yourself, for your team. So Lisa already put in the chat a link to schedule time with us. Please grab a half an hour. We'd love to hear from all of you. And also you can grab on the QR code a brochure about the Vertical Intelligence Program if you feel like that might be something helpful for you to look into a little further. So appreciate all your great questions. Like I said, you guys were an awesome group in terms of the thinking, the deep thinking that you brought to this webinar. It made it a lot of fun for us. So thank you for being here. And we'll see you on the next one.
All right, thank you.
See you later. Thanks for being here.